everyone, I hope you're going well. Welcome back. Today I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I'm not talking about style tips. What I'm going to be doing today is I'm going to be teaching you a way that you can rehash clothing that's maybe stained or that you're not wearing anymore to give it new life in the form of tie-dye. I'm such a big believer in that we need to reduce how much clothing and material ends up in landfill, and that all our purchases should be really well considered. So before you throw out a top or buy something new, maybe think about how that you can make it look fresh and different and give it new life. Now, tie-dye is a trend that has been happening for a couple of years now. I must admit, I'm a little bit obsessed, and I have been since I saw Prada's Autumn Winter 2019 collection. I really love their modern take on tie-dye. And even now in 2020, we're seeing an even bigger resurgence because of things like isolation and people being bored and doing tie-dye as a way to combat that boredom. So it's going to be a trend that's going to stick around all of this year because of that interest. So instead of buying tie-dye, why not you grab a piece of clothing that's stained or old or that you don't wear anymore and tie-dye it instead of spending money on something that you could have easily done yourself. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to teach you two methods that are really modern. So if you're like me, grew up in the 90s, don't think about that hyper rainbow colored tie-dye that you used to wear. This is something that is really modern, quite polished way of doing tie-dye. And I'm doing it for the very reasons that I'm suggesting. I've got a jumper that is stained, so I want to give it new life. And I've got a top that was gifted to me and I haven't worn really ever. So I thought, why not give it new life? So let's get to it and we'll go through the two different ways that you can do tie-dye in a modern look. All right, so first things first, what do you need to tie-dye? Well, obviously it goes without saying that you need a tie-dye kit. I'm using this one here by Tulip. It already comes in its bottles. So all you need to do is mix some water in. Makes it really simple. So I've got that kit there. Of course, you need water. You need some gloves. Believe me, you don't want stained hands for the rest of isolation, for those that you are in isolation right now. Some plastic bags to wrap your garments in. Some zip ties or elastic bands. I'm going to be using both today, and the Tulip kit is really great because it comes with elastic bands for you. And then of course you need your garments. So right here I have a cream jumper of mine that you can see there. It's got some stains already on it. I don't know if you can see that there. So I've got some stains. So I'm going to cover those up with tie-dye and give it new life. And then, as I previously mentioned as well, I've got a t-shirt here that was a gift when I bought some jewelry from a jewelry brand, and I don't really wear it. So I'm going to tie-dye it and give it a completely new look. So what you want to do first is to make sure that your garments, even if they are brand new, that they have been washed. So they need to be pre-washed garments, and you want them to be damp so that they can absorb the clothing. Not soaking wet, just damp. So I'm gonna lay my garment out here, and what I'm gonna do is I'm going to prepare these dyes. So this is where you wanna put on your gloves. Now the kit comes with these own gloves, but they're really large, and so I find that it's really hard to work with a garment when the gloves are too large to fit. So I put these aside and I use my own disposable gloves. So I'm going to be working with three colors on the jumper. I'm going to be working with a black, I'm going to be working with a blue and a pink. So I've pulled those dyes out from their packaging, and now I'm going to add the water to the black line. So as you can see, there's a black line there, and that's where I'm going to be adding the water. Now, all different dyes have different instructions, so make sure you read the instructions first, but these Tulip bottles make life really easy. So when I've done this in the past, I found it's really good to fill halfway up put the lid back on, mix the dye so you don't get too many lumps, because if you get too many lumps in the dye, then you're going to end up with not the effect that you want. So what I'm going to now do is I'm going to fill up to the rest of the line. And you can see it's quite full now, so that's why it's really hard to shake the bottle if you go all the way to the top to begin with. And now we can make sure that's nice and tight. Shake it all, make sure all the dye is dissolved. And now I'm going to go through and I'm going to do that. So that's the black done. I'm going to go through and do that for the pink and the blue. All right. So there we have it, 3 dyes ready to go. So the first method that I'm going to be doing to use my jumper is inspired by the Prada Autumn Winter 19 collection. And what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using some zip ties to begin with to create some really great lines where you can see the white of the jumper coming through. And I find zip ties with jumpers work better is because you can really cinch it in so you get to see that white coming through rather than using elastic bands. But of course you can use elastic bands if you prefer. So I'm going to set up, and then the second method I'm going to show you is the crumple technique, which is really super easy and simple to do. So, but first one, zip ties. So what I want to do is I want to create almost like a diagonal line, like curvature through here. And as you can see, there's my stain mark here, which has stopped me wearing this jumper. And I actually just switched my new gloves on because you can see from touching the bottles, I've just then added like finger marks to this jumper. But that's okay because that's going to be hidden at the end of the day. So there's no point stressing. So what I'm going to be doing is adding a curvature mark through here. And then I'm going to continue that curvature line up through the arm, and then I'm even going to do a loop around here. So what you want to do is where you've got your line is that's where you want to create these like little gathered folds across here, and I want to make sure that that stain, which is right here, is exposed, because obviously if it's not exposed, then it's going to end up being, you know, invisible through that tie-dye. There's another stain through there, so I want to make sure that's covered up as well. I'm going to start gathering now from the other side. So I'm just little gathers and pleats coming through. And then this is where you can see there's such a thick part of that clothing there because it is knitwear. So what I want to do is, that's where I find zip ties are perfect because they can just have a little bit more grab. And I'm going to cinch it nice and tight through there. And now what I want to do is where I saw that arm, I'm going to create one over here. So what I'm going to do is just create it where it was sitting before, a little bit of a gather there. Same again, nice and tight with a zip tie. There we go. And then I'd love to create one just here on the shoulder. So I'm going to do the same thing. I'm just going to grasp and gather. And pull it around. And there we go. That's where I want to gather in there. Perfect. That's the prep all done there. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start creating with the dye. So what I want to do here is I'm going to actually start with the pink. So let's do that to begin with. So and this is where you can create some little folds if you want. I'm just going to start squirting it on. Now I'm going to do the black. sure covering the other side. And I'm going to do the blue and come back to the black and pink because as you can see I need to make up some more dye. Going to replace these gloves while I change the dye over and flip the garment over. Okay, so I've filled up more dye as you can see in pink. So let's start there so I don't stain with these now spotted. So what I'm going to do is to get that pink side, I'm just going to do the same as I did before. Now, what you could do is flip it over, but because I'm using 3 different colors, that can be really hard. So what I'm actually going to do is just flip it over in stages, just to make sure that that underside is then covered, and same over here. The great thing with tie-dye is there's really no right or wrong way to do it. It all comes down to what you personally like. And you can see I did a little bit of this before. I still want some white to show through. So I'm going to pull it there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to change these gloves over again so I don't put pink where I want to put black. Great, so I'm now going to get the black. And I'm just going to make sure that it's all on the other side where I want it. So I'm just squirting up into the garment so I don't have to say rolling it over and getting colors where I don't want the colors to be. Great, that all looks pretty good. I'm just going to double check. Yeah, we've got blue over on this side, perfect. Great, so now what you want to do is to wrap this in plastic. Once again, because of the different colors, that can be quite hard. So I'm actually going to place it in this tub in here and I'm going to remove all that stuff out of that basket. And then you're going to let it sit for 6 to 8 hours. I'm probably going to leave it for 6 as I don't want it to be too fuchsia pink. And then what you want to do is to rinse it, chuck it in the wash and wash it separately and we'll see what we get. So what you can see is I've wrapped my garment in plastic. I've done it in 4 sections and placed it in this basket here. And that's because I don't want the colors to run. Like I don't want that black to get in the way of the pink. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this for 6 to 8 hours just as it is now and then rinse it off and wash it separately. And I can't wait to show you the results. All right, the next method that I'm going to show you is the crumple method. And it is exactly what it says. You're just going to crumple up the shirt. There's no right or wrong way to do this. And it is literally the easiest way to tie-dye. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start in the middle. And what you want to do is you can see I'm just crumpling, pinching all that material in and coming in from the other side. Just tuck it all in. Once again, this shirt is nice and damp. I'm then going to take it into a bit of a circle. You don't want it too thick because otherwise that dye's just not going to get in there and you're going to end up with too much white. Now you could leave it as is and dye it, but I always find it's best to add some elastic bands so that it holds its shape and that way you don't actually get, because it's nice and tight, you don't actually get too much just cross bleeding. And it looks the way it should. So same thing, no right or wrong answer. Just go through, add in your elastic bands because essentially what you want to do is make this really nice and tight. You could do this as just one big one, but I like taking them across so that everything stays nice and tight. And it's also good in the fact that it keeps your garment staying damp for longer, which is what you want so that dye actually like gets in there and sets. Just gonna add one more in. Great. crinkle that in here. Good. All right. Now, I've still got some dye, as you can see, left up from when I did the zip ties. And I think it's such a waste to use a different color. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to use the black again in on this and just go for it. What's the point of creating new dye when you don't really need to? So what you want to do is you just want to spray over the top like this. And once again, it's okay if you see a bit of white. You just don't want too much white so that you get that tie-dye effect. You might want to squish a little bit into the folds because that's where you can get a lot of white, especially when it's a thick fabric. Make sure you cover around the edges. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to flip it over and do the same on the other side. Trying to keep my sprays nice and neat here so I don't end up with too much dye over my table cover. Same in, you can see here there's quite a thick part, so I'm just going to go in around here and into the folds, because the folds is essentially where you're going to get that tie-dye effect, but you don't want too much white, otherwise, as I mentioned before, you lose too much of that effect. So now what I'm going to do, similar to what I did before, I'm going to wrap this in plastic, so just a plastic bag, or if you use things like cling wrap as well, and I'm going to let it set there for 6 to 8 hours. So I'm going to check it at 6 hours, see how it is. If it's looking good, I'm then going to rinse it and wash it, but separately to the garment I just made. So let's see how it goes. Okay, it's a few days later. As you saw, I've rinsed out my tie-dye pieces, washed them on, I actually did it on a cold wash cycle, especially because I had a knitwear piece and I didn't want it to shrink in warmer water, and I laid them out to dry, the knitwear on an air so that it didn't warp in shape, and I'm really happy with how they came out. I must admit, I didn't leave them for the full 6 to 8 hours as per recommended on the package of the tie-dye. I actually left them for 5 hours, and that's because I wanted the colors a little bit more muted. It's just my own personal preference. High impact, really bright tie-dye reminds me of the 90s, of my childhood, and I wanted these pieces to feel a little bit more modern. So I left them a little bit more muted, which meant taking them out of the tie-dye, washing that tie-dye off, the dye off a little bit earlier than recommended. And I'm really happy with how it came out. So let me show you. This is the jumper first. So as you can see, it's really great with this black is a little bit more muted. You can see some of the blue coming through the black, and you can see where those zip tie lines that's where the white of the knit is showing through, and I'm really happy with the pink through the bottom. So that's the jumper. This would look really great with a leather skirt or some blue denim, or even with a really great denim jacket over the top. It's just going to be a piece that is just going to kind of make a statement with any outfit, whatever I pair it with. All right, you ready to see the tee? This is the tee here. So that's the crumple method, so different. You can see a lot more white of the tee is showing through. That was the black dye, and because I didn't leave it in for so long, you can kind of see it's a little bit gray, some bit in black, and then it's kind of blue bleed through, and I really love it. I love that you can still see the writing underneath, and it's taken just a plain, really kind of boxy white tee to something else, and you can see the back there, which is really uniform with the front. And the reason I got a bit of white but not huge patches of white is because I stuck the dye into the folds. So that's a really great tip when you're doing the crumple dye, and it held, I mean, a lot of the crumple because of those elastic bands as well. So when you do the crumple, make sure you follow those steps. I'm really happy. Same again, high-waisted denim. This is going to be really great, and then a leather jacket over the top for autumn and winter. I'm really stoked. If you need any more tips, hit me up, and I can't wait to see what you do with your tie-dye.